Welcome, friends and family and keepers of the true faith, to Blog 21, dated 17th of July 2022. And what a lovely day it is today. Let's start off with what the weather's been like. It seems to be on everybody's minds at the moment. It's been an absolute lovely week of sun, and I can say that I've spent at least an hour or more on my walks this week and doing some stuff for my mother in the garden, and to be quite honest, it's quite relaxed me. Nobody I think really likes rain, although to be quite honest I think we could possibly do with some, because it really does clear the air. And speaking to some people this week, I think a lot of people agree with that. But we start off everything usually with the news, and I can tell you now I've prepared nothing for the news. I haven't been bothered to even really look. I'm pretty sure that if I was to look at the news, it would be filled with a couple of things that I cover an awful lot. So the war, we know that's still going. I've heard absolutely nothing and seen nothing in the papers, because my mother reads the papers every day, to say that the war is finished. I know full well with Boris Johnson resigning that there is a leadership campaign going on, and they have a summer recess, so I should think that they're halfway to 3/4 of the way cutting back the people that have put their names forward. The weather will have obviously been in the news. There is a weather warning, I believe, for today, tomorrow and Tuesday, where the temperatures may go up to 40 degrees. And all I can say about that is, all of my friends, you've all got common sense, so I don't need to really mention anything about that. So pretty sure that's going to be most of the news. The only thing I did listen to on the news which saddened me was Paul Ryder from the Happy Mondays died. I think he was the bassist. That made me think a little bit about what I used to listen to in the 90s, more than what I was listening to in the 80s and 70s, you know, as a child or a teenager. So, and Happy Mondays was one of those bands that there was always a couple of tracks that you liked, and so it was always sad to hear that somebody else has died, and this time a little bit closer to your 30s, I suppose, in my terms. So, wow, you start to look at your mortality again, and then you start thinking about yourself again. So I tried not to do too much of that. It just saddened me to hear of his death, and let's hope that there is going to be some good news on the horizon. So really that just brings me to what I've been sort of like watching a little bit. So I'll start off, because YouTube is something that I do a lot more watching now, more than the TV. And to be quite honest, the TV is really boring me. And with the heat, it's starting to get a little bit difficult, because I'm in a very stuffy, small room. And if I open the windows, I'm right under a tree where those horrible little gnats come through, you know, that bite. So I have to be a little bit careful with when I open it. Plus, of course, you only get a gentle breeze coming through. So if I've got all my equipment on, not only do the lights outside dim because I'm using the national power grid like nobody's business, you know, basically it generates heat. So I have to be a little bit careful about what I'm having on. And hey, I'm doing a little bit for the environment. So let's talk a little bit about what I've been watching on YouTube then. So of course I've been watching Steve 8-Bit very closely. Now Steve 8-Bit, I'm very impressed with his channel. I'm very much a retro person, and when he decided to start his channel, I was very pleased that he was going to do something, and very pleased as well that he constantly thinks about how he can freshen things up. Now, he's only a month or so in. He must be, what, about 6 weeks, 7 weeks now? And already he's thinking about having another playlist, something along the lines of tedious or boring type games that possibly you'd play, but you'd get really, really bored an awful lot. Now, I can think of possibly a couple of games like that, especially those ones where you get the key from the chest and you take it to the tree in the south of the garden and you climb the tree to give it to the pixie that basically you get the idea, you know what I mean? Those adventure-y type games, because you can really get stuck on a puzzle, or basically it's just pure tedium walking past something that's not been drawn very well, or there's something about it anyway that just becomes pure tedium. He's thinking of a title. He asked me what titles I could give. Obviously, I'm not a wordsmith. I mean, Ronnie Barker was the wordsmith of a hero of mine, and I always used to love how Douglas Adams came up with such unusual names for his characters and everyday things. So, you know, you're not going to be able to ask them, and one of them's dead. So, you know, I think I came up with a title: The Good, the Bad, and the Tedious. But I'm looking forward to what he's actually going to call his link. Now, he did do 2 games that really cheered me up and I smiled at. There was one called Doc Cosmos, which I'm pretty sure I saw on Mainmeister's channel, or one of my close watchers on here, because that's a newish game, and it's one of those ones that I think went into a coding competition, and the uniqueness about it, I think, was how much RAM it used when they developed the game, plus you switched between eras. It's very difficult to explain, but it's a platform game, and basically you could switch to 1970s, 80s graphics and modern graphics, and when you're switching between the two, the character develops different traits. Like in the oldish era, you know, the 70s or 80s, he can jump further. Anyway, I don't want to give too much away. You really must watch that video, because you can see a person that's just loaded it up, never played it, and come across a puzzle, and you can almost hear the cogs going in Steve's head on how to get past this puzzle. And oh my God, you can hear those cogs. I don't know if it's because of his age, but he always makes me laugh with his death sequences. But he is now so slick, he makes me feel sick. There we are. How's that for poetry? Slick, sick. But no, I love you, Steve. Keep up the good work, and please, everybody, do subscribe to his channel. And if you're ever feeling down, just watching him die, it's just so much fun. Anyway, then we go to Rob. Now, Rob is someone that I've also been championing an awful lot in my channel, because he gives me immense pleasure, because he's showing me more Atari games. And Atari games is so much further back in my history that I'm seeing games that I've either forgotten or I never actually got to play, because what you have to remember is that the big chunk of my life was the Commodore 64 and the Amiga. And the very early part of my life, I had lots of machines, you know, ZX80, ZX81, VIC-20. I've talked about it, as well as the shop, you know, where I was repairing certain stuff. That I rotated those machines around, and I never really bought games. He's been doing a couple of themes, really. I've noticed this week he's done more Jeff Minter games, which is no bad thing. Jeff Minter is a hero of mine. I've met him. The mechanics that he brings into his games, inertia effects and so forth, just make a lot of his games sort of fresh, even though they were sometimes copies of arcade games or stuff that's been done before. He's a unique character as a coder, and one that I think that everybody should. Well, if there was a study in stuff, he definitely should be a month study on Jeff Minter. Take it like that. He also did a Space Invaders Day. That was quite amusing because there are quite a different few versions of Space Invaders, and he's looked around and he's found a couple, and ones that I didn't know were out there. Definitely worth a watch. Always makes me smile, and oh my god, his output. Take it like this. He's been around a little bit less than Steve, I think, doing his own videos, and he is now up to around about game 85. Take it like that. If you do the maths on that, it's 2 or 3 a day, with maybe the weekends off. I couldn't keep up with that. So I do thank him from the bottom of my heart for just giving me something to watch every day, and I really do need something like that at the moment. Now Ponder's done his normal work, and his is always an entertaining channel because he'll do slightly longer channel, stuff. And he did a sort of review on Zap Fight 2, which, to be quite honest, I'm not a big fan of games that are designed with game designers like shoot 'em up construction kits and stuff. But there's on occasion the odd one that basically is done quite well. They've put quite a bit of effort in. Zap Fight 2 is one of those. But to be quite honest, I really do appreciate a coder that's coded something from scratch. I'd need a construction kit to do something because I'm not very good with languages. I'm not very good at coding. I'm okay at my maths, even though I'm not fantastic. The computer does most of the maths for you anyway. So as long as you're quite logical, you could probably learn languages, and I'm not that bad at logic. But I think I would suffer a little bit designing a game, just purely because I've seen so many. I'd get clouded and bring something in that I'm sure I think would be unique, and then somebody would brought me back and say around and say, it's been done in about 15 games. What are you? Where have you come from? Don't you play games? And yeah, things like that can hold me back a little bit. But I will say this: the whole hour of Ponder's show, plus his Sid show that he does on a Sunday, by the way, he does a Sid radio show. Definitely worth a listen, definitely worth a watch. Now, Rabbit is I think he told me he was going on his holiday, so this is down the rabbit hole. But he did do a very interesting, he made me think, take it like this, thing about Dungeons and Dragons, and how you're always going to be going on a mission. You're going to go into caves, or you're going to go into a wilderness, and you're supposed to carry all these things. And he made me think, really, about something that I thought about years ago, which is, where the hell do you put all this stuff? I mean, you'd need a cart behind you to carry all this stuff around. So the one thing that he cottoned on to was that you need a rope. But the trouble is, you really need ropes to climb up things, climb down things, possibly even tie something up that you've knocked out or whatever. And that means you need different gauges of rope, or something that's quite strong. You can't have rope that's sort of more like the string that you tie your shoes up with. Take it like that. So he found some rope that's really quite strong. It's not too thin, but it really did look to me in the video like it was shoestring. But he designed a way of quick releasing the rope and tying it around his belt. Now, it's really hard to explain, but it almost looked like the loops that you have on your shoes, where there's a loop at either end and there's a cord that goes through the center. And when you pulled the loop off the end, it all fell to bits off of the rope. And that meant that you could really put 3 or 4 times the length of rope going all the way around your belt. And I thought, wow, that's ingenious. And he actually shows you how to actually do it. Definitely worth a watch. Just just so that you could learn those techniques of tying knots and ropes and things. I mean, I found it totally worth a watch. And then, of course, we've got Vlog. Now, Vlog gave me a shout out the other week. I've always watched his stuff, but he always used to do, from my memory, of a sort of like a blog like mine. Every now and again, it wasn't like every Sunday like mine. And just to remind you that mine is done on every Sunday because it's a weekend, and I like to talk about how my week has been. And I wanted to show, like a montage, the warts and all of how I've changed. You know, like certain days, you know, I might be so down that I don't care about my appearance. Other days I'm feeling quite buoyant and have cared about what I'm wearing, what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm, you know, and so forth and so forth. And although it's a weekly snapshot and not a daily one, I think a daily one would be too much. So going back to Vlog, he did an interesting blog, and basically he talked a little bit about the heat wave that we're just about to approach, but he also had a little discussion about kids' TV shows. Now, I must admit, I haven't talked much about kids' TV shows, and it might be something that I'll bring up in the future. I must admit, when I went to school and I was bullied an awful lot, fantasy was something that was very dear to me. You know, whether it was reading a book or watching it on TV or listening to it on a record or a tape. I needed to get out of my shell. I needed to go somewhere where nobody knew me, my personality was not known, and that I could be anybody or anything that I want. I could be aggressive when I needed to be. I could be placid when I didn't need to be. So that's something I might bring up. Let me know if you wanted to know a little bit more about that far back in my history, because I did talk about bullying with Mainmeister. It really was invigorating to think back at it. It's not something that I'd like to do every week, because bringing back bad memories is not good for your mental health, but it is sometimes good to give a reflection on something, and if it helps somebody else talk about something that's bad that's happened in their life, maybe there could be some good come from it. And then there's Mainmeister. I can't miss Mainmeister. Mainmeister is usually the first thing that I look at or listen to, and he's been talking about this week the cost of living and a shout out video. And the shout out video is something, you know, obviously I do, but his audience is massive. To have someone like Mainmeister, who we've watched for years, give a shout out is something that I truly appreciate. I mean, it's not really, like he said, it's not really about the subscribers. It's about the audience that he's reaching out to. And if somebody comes along and watches a video that I've done and enjoys it, then I feel good about myself. If I feel that only the same amount of people are watching it and I'm giving it to just friends and family, that's fine as well. It's just that I'm pretty sure that you're going to get bored of me. I'm going to come across as a fake at some point. I can tell you now, I'm the most unfake thing you can probably come across, and I don't lie. It's one of those things where I get my words back to front, my meaning comes across wrong. I'm not infallible. I'm the first person to put my hands up and turn around and say, "Whoa, I got that wrong." But I do like a big discussion. So, you know, I just wanted to say to those people, and Mainmeister, thank you very much for your broadcast. I mean, this week you talked a little bit about being a grumpy old sod. Well, you are, you grumpy old sod. You are definitely the Walter Matthau of grumpy old men, and I'm probably Jack Lemmon. Because he mentioned that I'm grumpy as well, and I suppose I can be. But he was talking about cost of living, and everybody's got their own point of view on the cost of living. I try not to finger point and say where the blame is. I'm one of these people that if I'm unsure on why something is costing an awful lot of money, I'll do possibly a little bit of research into it before I open my gob. Now, that's not to say that Mainmeister's got anything wrong and his point of view is not valid. It's just that I know that with so much crap going on in the world at the moment, so in Britain we're still trying to get our heads around Brexit. So there are lots of customs stuff going on. There's lots of environmental things going on which affect how we grow things and that therefore how we sell things abroad and what we import in. We're in still in a COVID situation that keeps going up and down, but we've relaxed the rules on that a little bit, and there's a war going on now. I happen to mention in one of my blogs that Tesco started to sell sunflower oils maximum of 2 bottles per customer, and what I have to understand with that is why is that? And when I looked it up, it's because one of our biggest imports is sunflower oil from the Ukraine. There we are. There's a war going on. Now, if I was to extend that to manufacturers, Walker's Crisp fry their crisps in sunflower oil. Is there going to be a price increase on crisps? Hell so. Yeah, there is. Brexit was supposed to be bringing our laws back into ourselves and being able to trade what we want with our exports and control what we do on our imports. But of course, a war is just going to confound all of that. So this is where I'm saying, please, 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 let's end this war. And when it comes to poverty and so forth, I totally feel for you guys. I just think that finger pointing is going to get us nowhere, and that there's got to be a solution. And our government has now got to look seriously at how they can help us with tax cuts and so forth, or some other method that I am not intelligent enough to give you the answers for. Now, this is where we rely on you guys. Trouble is, you're acting like schoolboys. You're throwing shit at the wall and hoping some of it sticks and that some of it will work. Not the right method. That's brainstorming. If you've ever been to a meeting and you've done brainstorming, half the shit that goes up on a brainstorming wall you wouldn't touch. But I'm pretty sure you're doing those brainstormings and you're bringing every single one of it in as a solution. Not the way to do things. So I've gone down a route I shouldn't really have gone down to, and I apologise. So TV wise, with the heat and everything, I haven't really felt like watching anything. But Star Trek Strange New Worlds ended at episode 10, which is a smallish season, and I thoroughly enjoyed that season. I think there was about maybe 2 or 3 that were very humdrum. There were obvious things that I knew that they were going to bring in, but that doesn't make them bad. They do those things because they're fan favourites. It's what they think the fans want. Say that when you're drunk. Now, I don't mind a small amount of it, and I think that Strange New Worlds did start to go towards the too much. But at the very beginning, it had just enough, and I was getting more and more into the characters. Do I think it's worth any type of watch by anybody out there that likes a bit of science fiction and so forth? Definitely. It's 10 episodes. It's 50 minutes an episode. If you could probably binge watch it and go through that very, very quickly, a day to 2 days. If you binge watch over a week, that's a couple of episodes a day. It's one of those things where I don't think you'll be overpowered by it, and I don't think you'd get bored of it if you either watched it very quickly or you spread it out week by week as a weekly episode. 1883, which is a sort of like a Deadwood type show to me. I haven't watched as much of that because I like to savour those things, because I'm very into westerns and how we lived over in America in the 18th, 19th century. So I tend to spend my time with those, and I'm only up to episode 4. It is totally there for me to binge watch if I want, but it's not a slow burner, but it's not for everybody. Deadwood to me excited me from the end of episode 1, and I just couldn't stop watching it. This one's is not quite the same, but it's worth a watch. Now, my shout outs. So these people have commented, left me questions. Thank you very much for doing that. And some of the questions and the comments are now starting to really sort of pique my interest with possibly arguments. Do you know what I mean? A different point of view that has, I think, definitely has been put there because that is that particular point of view of that person, or to spark something in me to counter elaborate from another direction with their comment. So the ones that have come out this week are Martroid, Colin Jones, Steve's 8-Bit Gaming, Highlander, Stevie Paperboy, Cauldron of Stardust, Jambon, Colin Ferguson, Panther UK, Milfy Swimbuckle, 20th Century Gaming, GTB Films. And as always, thanks to Mainmeister for making his weekly phone call to me and seeing how I am and asking my opinion and so forth on things. I really do look forward to that call. And, you know, I don't know quite how I'll ever repay you, really, to get me through some very dark periods of my life. But anyway, now Cauldron, I don't think he asked a question, but I brought up something just now where I said a different point of view. And Cauldron is one of those types of people that doesn't hide behind anything with his words. If he's got something to say, he'll say it. And I've this week possibly come across more of a disagreement with him than I have an agreement. And I won't apologise for that. It's just that in some ways I think you're wrong, and in other ways I can see your point of view. So please keep those up, Cauldron. They're great. I'm not going to give too many examples of what you've come across. I know that one of them is that you definitely wished me well with what was going on with my work life, but you stated that you knew all along that I'd lose, and that's not a bad thing to say. Don't think that I got upset by a comment like that. I probably wouldn't have come across possibly with words like knew, because even my union rep, who's a lawyer, didn't know. Sometimes you might want to go with words like I had an inkling, or I was praying for you, but I hoped that it would come across. But nothing you said hurt me, nothing you said upset me. And, you know, like I say, keep coming forwards with things that, you know, embrace a conversation. I mean, I really thank you, because yours has probably been the one that I've spent the most time probably writing an answer to, and that gets me out the doldrums. So I'm thanking you, Cauldron, for bringing out stuff to me and offering a different perspective on things. Now, Colin Jones, he asked a question. He wanted to know what sci-fi or movie TV series have been my favourite, but it was on the back of something where he was talking more about possibly my comics, and I didn't know whether he meant, did you mean by books, or did you mean by watching on a TV or at the cinema? And I think I've answered the question quite a few times, Colin, in regards to my favourite TV shows and movies. But I will say this. I mentioned earlier that TV was important to me because of bullying and a number of other things, you know, that were going on in my life. You know, I felt alone at certain points, probably because I wasn't getting on with my sister. And when my sister looks back at this, I don't want her to look back at this with regrets, because you shaped what I am now. And I don't think I'm a bad person. So, hey, you probably thickened my skin. In fact, if beauty was skin deep, I've got rhino hide. But, you know, you can look at things and say, I might have done things a different way. And I love your kiddies to bits, you know, my nephew and niece, and you've brought them up well. So you couldn't have been that bad, could you really? Hey, sis? But anyway, so TV was very important to me, and I watched a lot of TV stuff. But if you wanted to know what my real favourite TV type of material is, the anthology stuff. So I mentioned it before, Twilight Zone. Rod Serling is a god. He wrote 3/4 or more of the episodes of the Twilight Zone. He did 5 seasons of it and nearly 170 odd episodes. That guy, well, you know, just a genius as far as I'm concerned. Everything with a twist. It's why I think Planet of the Apes is one of those all-time great sci-fi shows, which he wrote the screenplay for. So, if anybody's seen the end of the Planet of the Apes, you know what I mean. I love the twists. That's what you go, oh, I didn't see that coming, you know. One of the favourite shows is To Serve Man. I'm not going to talk about it. If you know what it is already, don't tell everybody in the comments. But that is quintessential Rod Serling, and what a story, which is only 23 minutes long. Time Enough at Last is another one. Okay, Time Enough at Last. Those 2 episodes, go and watch those. I mean, I could mention loads of others. Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with William Shatner. There's something on the wing, you know what I mean? We could all do a William Shatner impression badly as that. Anyway, Steve's 8-Bit Gaming. He wanted to know how many sealed items I've got, whether it be films, games, consoles, whatever, and how long is the oldest. And to be quite honest, Steve, that is an incredible question, and one that would be virtually impossible for me to answer. During the pandemic, I was buying stuff and never watching it, and I was doing more overtime, and so my exuberance in what I could spend was much more than now. So I was buying so much stuff that it would remain sealed. I don't think I could count it up and separate it up into, I've opened this and I haven't opened that. And it's equally as difficult to talk about something that's sealed that's my oldest, but it will be Marvel related. It will be something to do with the comic book line. It will be something to do with Spider-Man, I should think. I do know that I've got at least something from the 80s. I think I've got a Spider-Man chess set that you could only get in the States at the time, that is unopened. Pretty sure of it. And I got that in 1983. I'm pretty sure I've got stuff older than that. I mean, I've got, yes, in fact, okay, I have got a record. Power records, they were called. It's where you had a comic book and a record in the same sleeve, and you read along with the record. Okay, and there's one called Mark of the Man Wolf. That's it. Power records, which used to be Peter Pan records, they started off in 1926, but the Marvel line came out in the mid-70s, and I know I've got one of theirs sealed, and it is a 70s one as well, because it was given to me by an American Air Force gentleman who had to leave and go back to America, and I never opened it, because what happened was I managed to find the British version of it. My dad bought it me, and that meant I could listen to it, and I kept his sealed. Yes, there we are. Glad I managed to answer that one, but I had to think, my God. Now, Panther. Now, there's going to be a question at the end of this. Okay. Now, Panther UK, everybody knows he's one of my best friends. He's one of those types of people that really looks out for me. He'll send me the odd text that makes me laugh. He'll send the odd link. He'll always say, look, bother me whenever you want. I'm there for you, buddy, if you want it. And that's really good. And it gets me through some very tricky situations. The problem I have with Panther is that he's just so big-headed. I mean, I just don't know how he gets into his house at night. I mean, are the doors, do you have them doubly wided or something? I mean, how do you go through a revolving door? I mean, it's just, you know, You know what I mean? Your production values. You know, we know you've got some sort of mixing board or something. For fuck's sake. Oh, see, he makes me swear. Now, I mean, well, I ain't going to say anymore. He wanted to know what system I regret getting rid of. And it's a loaded question, that one, Panther, because, yes, I got rid of my Commodore 64 about 2 years into getting my Amiga, and I sold my Amiga pretty much a couple of years into the 90s, where I went PC route. Do I regret selling those? No, because basically I had 6 or 7 years of those, and I've gone back to them, and I've got, you know, a Commodore 64 red bin, bought just before everybody was going mad for buying Commodore 64s again. I've got a Commodore 128, I've got an Atari 800, and all sorts of stuff. And because there was stuff that I just didn't sell, even when I could get my real money for it, like I get real money for it now. I'm a bit of a hoarder, but I mentioned before the system I probably regret selling the most was my Pandora handheld. And the reason for that is I had to sell it so that I could get to work. My car, I needed a car to get to work badly. It had blown up. It was a write-off. It had already gone through one engine. It was a Vauxhall Astra Mark II. And therefore I had no choice but to sell probably one of the most expensive items that I bought at that time as a handheld. And one that I'd spent so little time with. The things I could have done with it. I don't like to think about it too much, because I know that Mainmeister ums and ahs sometimes in certain parts of his life where he's considered it, and I've told him, whatever you do, don't. And the reason for that is I regret selling mine. I really do. But I hope that answers that part of your question. The other one is, we all know that you're trying to keep Foodgate open, right? And I'm going to put it to the vote. Okay, now I had a word with Panther on this, and I said, I don't mind it. It makes me laugh. It's funny. Do people want Foodgate to continue? Please comment. Saying all that, he's asked me what's my favourite restaurant that I like to go and have my food at. See what I mean? Foodgate, you bastard. Anyway, there was a time where I was on the road an awful lot with Lloyd's Bank, where I was selling something called invoice importing, where it wasn't really a sell, it was sort of like installing it and then explaining how it works, so that they could get their invoices paid within a couple of days rather than a week. Okay, and I was the lead tester on that, and therefore I was the person that set up the service desk on how to answer questions that when it breaks down, or if it ever crashed or anything. So I remember I had to go to London, and I got the luck of being able to stay at the Savoy. I did have a nice meal at the Savoy, although to be quite honest, back then I looked at it and went, is that all you get for that money? Seriously, is this the starter? But my favourite places to eat now are just like transport cafes. They're just no nonsense, very tasty, and you get your bang for your buck. Do you know what I mean? I don't like going into Morrison's supermarkets and Sainsbury's cafes and all of those sorts of things where they count the sausages and all that sort of crap. And Jenny's restaurants, they annoy me as well. I used to love going to a carvery, but I can't go to a carvery anymore because they're over 20 or so miles away from me. I do miss a carvery. I hope that answers that, Panther. Thank you very much for being who you are, you bastard. Now, the last question is from Milfy Swimbuckle. And as you know, anybody who knows Mainmeister and I, and the questions at the end, he asks the most complex questions. I hope I gave a good one to the Groundhog Day. I think I got it correct, but not sure because he never comments afterwards to say thanks. but I know he does. So thanks. He wanted to say that I'm stuck in a cave for 1 year with Mainmeister and Panther. Oh my God. Do you seriously want to kill me, Milfy? Anyway, we've got £1,000 to spend, and I am the leader because we all know we can't trust Panther and Mainmeister. Too bloody right. I'm the leader. Bloody leave it to those two jokers. Jesus. Right. I've been given £1,000, but I can't buy anything electrical. What am I going to buy to last that year? Now, I've taken it, Milfy, that we've got lighting. We've got food. And we choose from a menu or whatever it is in this cave. Because £1,000 ain't going to last very long. Now, I'm a very giving person and I haven't put something too much to me. Okay? And I've chosen ones that I think would be quite good because we need to entertain ourselves, but we also need to be healthy. So I've chosen a pool table because I know that Mainmeister does have a girlfriend that likes pool and he could definitely do with the lessons. All right, so practice, 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 Mainmeister. I've also chosen a martial arts stand. Now, I don't know if you know what those are. I'm sure you've seen Bruce Lee. They've got a wooden post with nobules sticking out and you can karate chop them and try to get your fists to go at specific angles at the same angle every time that you pull that, do that punch. That would benefit both of them, Mainmeister and Panther, because they constantly barrage us with their going off to their martial arts. Blah, blah, blah. No, seriously, I enjoy those talks. I just think that you'd get some major benefit of that and it'll keep you both healthy. And of course you can, every time I'm having a conversation with you and I piss you off, which would be every day, you can go over there and take all the aggression out on that thing. I've chosen a treadmill as a communal device because I go on my walks and I'm in a cave, and you don't have to have a powered treadmill. You can have manual treadmills, so I know full well that that isn't an electrical device. Now, I've chosen the one thing for me, which may sound a bit weird and a bit silly. I'd like the old type manual camera that requires no electricity at all to operate, with all the developing chemicals that you would need to develop your own photography, because I'd like to diary the 1 year with photographs. Okay, and I know that that's possible. You can get away without flashes with battery. You can use chemicals for that as well. Okay, and then there was the last one. Now, I could be very rude here and say these two guys who are some of my best friends haven't got their girlfriends with them, so I'll buy them a blow-up doll each and I'll call them Pepsi and Shirley and they can go wherever they want with it. But no, we won't drop it down to that level. I think that maybe a piano or a guitar might be quite good for calming things down. But I do know that if you can't play, then basically it can really seriously do some nastiness to you. You know, turn that you can't play, and you know what I mean. But then again, live with it or put something in your ear so you can't hear it. There is at least 5 items there. The last one being a choice. Sex doll or musical instrument. I'll let them fight over it. And basically, what have I been doing this week? I got my A500 out of its box. Oh my God, did I? Yeah, I bloody well did. Thought this week I'll do something. And I've put 2 things on it. Something called PCUAAE, which is like a boot menu strap. It's like a boot strap. And Pandori, which is basically RetroArch. And the reason for that is that I didn't want to wait for a firmware update that didn't block the ability for you to put your own emulators on it, which firmware 1.1.1 does. Okay, you can still get certain emulators to work on it. It's just it's a Linux boot strap, and they blocked off certain emulators. So by putting PCU AAE on the root of your memory stick and going to the USB stick, you can actually boot it into several different firmwares that you want to use. One of them can be the latest version 1.1.1, and therefore you can then operate it just as if you've got the latest firmware on it, but when you turn it off, it goes back to the stock 1.0. So that was very useful to know that. And then Pandora basically is RetroArch, and I don't want RetroArch for anything other than the Amiga side of things. And you'd probably think to yourself, why, when you've got an Amiga? It's just that it's in its infancy. It's only been out 2 months or so, and they patch it up, and they're starting to give us more options for us to control RAM, copper, blitter, and so forth, right? So, and as they do that, they're making it so that we can now have accurate emulation in regards to its speed. But you could only do that with a firmware update so that you could play ADF files. ADF files being the floppy disk versions instead of WHD load. So if you load something with WHD load, it tends to find that its configuration doesn't load correctly for the emulator. ADF gives you the model of the Amiga that you want to emulate, plus how much RAM you want with it. So basically you get accurate emulation. But what is damn awful on the A500 Mini is CD32 emulation. And if you go to RetroArch, you get a much better experience. So I go to RetroArch to play CD32 stuff, and I go to the carousel for playing normal Amiga stuff through WHD load or ADF. So I downloaded 2 packs, something called AGS2, which is a huge package of games and demos and tracker info in one package, and it's something like, I think it was 14-15 gig. And then a 100 CD32 package, which I found, which has got 100 CD32 Amiga games on it, and there were, I think, about 120 odd CD32, so it's almost like the complete collection. So those have got me entertained at the moment, and so we reach near the end where I talk about some big box games and what I bought. Let's talk about what I bought. Now, I bought this little mini keyboard to go with my A500, and I just want to show you how dinky it is. There we go, that's how dinky it is. And it is Bluetooth Wi-Fi with a mouse. It even is infrared. There we go, there's the infrared, and it's got a charging port and an on-off. Where's the Bluetooth part? Just there, hidden in there. You can lift, I think, well, I've got no nails, but you can pull this out. Oh. There we go, pull this out, and the Bluetooth dongle is just there. And then you slide it back in. This works with lots, you know, like any PC, but it also works with game consoles, and more importantly, with an app, it works with your Fire Stick. That was probably, yeah, the best 16 quid really for my A500. Steelbooks, as you know, I still get. So that concludes my Doctor Who film collection, because there were 2. There was Invasion Earth and Doctor Who and the Daleks. The Northman I've heard so much about that I took a punt on this one. And I'm looking forward to watching this, because I do like Viking type stuff. But I believe the director of this also did The Lighthouse, which I thought was a pretty good film. And then from an oldish point of view, I bought Red Sonja. Yes, I bought it for the cover. No, I didn't. Red Sonja is not a terrifically fantastic film in my eyes, but it is one that I watched and enjoyed. So quite a nice cover, actually, you know. And it's glossy, so, you know, go figure. You know, shiny things I like. So then we'll go into some games. Now, I haven't put these in any order. Age of Empires 2, I think everybody must have played Age of Empires 2 now. But this is the big box, just to show you that I was playing it back in the day when you got a huge, great big box and a manual. And didn't that look just lovely? I loved my strategy games. Age of Empires 2. Anybody want to take a guess at how long I played that game? Anyway, I'll let you have a think about that. The official Formula 1 racing from Eidos. I didn't buy many racing games, but I did buy the odd one. This one got the best GP game of recent times, 90% in PC Gamer. Well, you know, you can either take those reviews or not. But I do remember having some fun with this one. Just like Jeff Crammon's Formula 1 on the 8-bits, I didn't really get too far. Now, after we got past Quake, we went to Quake Arena. Now, the amount of times people have probably bought Quake 3 Arena. It was on the Dreamcast, it was on the PS2, it was on the Xbox, it was on your PC. You played it online, you didn't play it online. There was designers, you know, map designers. This was a big thing back in the day. And of course, I bought the big box version. Many happy hours with that, actually, even with bots. But it was more the design element. Now, RFC this week on his channel talked about the re-emergence of Steve Jackson's fighting fantasy range. And he happened to mention Death Trap Dungeon. And it brought to my mind, I said, I'm pretty sure I've got Death Trap Dungeon. Lo and behold, look, I have, as a game, Death Trap Dungeon. Now, it is an awful game. Absolutely atrocious. This was the limited edition, includes Death Trap Dungeon game book and card game. Yes, it does. Does it make it any good? No, it bloody well doesn't. The fighting fantasy games, we'll discuss that, I think, next week. Anybody play those? I loved them. You know, the putting your fingers in the certain pages so that you didn't die, so that you could always go back. Well, we could talk about that forever. But we might bring up that next week. And then, not a big box, but one that really opened my eyes at the time was Company of Heroes. You can see there that this one came with Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War in a special limited edition. This one interested me because it was an RTS where really there was no resources. You basically had a limited amount of troops. You couldn't generate more, and you had to get across the map and do whatever it was that was the mission. So much fun with that. They didn't disappoint me with their sequel game of Company of Heroes 2, and I believe Company of Heroes 3 is in the next couple of months. And that's everything. Thank you so much. Another 52 minutes. Do you know, I go back to the days where this only lasted 30 minutes. Please also tell me if these do go overly long, whether I don't give enough in one particular area, or if there's a particular topic you want me to talk about. I'm definitely showing enough for my family, I think, with items that I think they'll recognise as being worth something or not. So don't worry too much about the family side of things. I definitely count that in parts of my discussion, and definitely the beginning of the news and what I've bought at the end. So I do want to make this something enjoyable for you guys as well. So please keep them in. Thank you for your questions. Please keep those coming in. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.